Well, for me, it's always neat when somebody comes up in the street, especially when we're involved in the rugby academy. You know, some kid up in the street and says, "G'day, Dave. You probably don't remember me, but," and then they say that they're now got a professional contract somewhere, or they're just coaching whatever they're doing, or playing wherever they are. That's always been, and that's probably been the biggest motivator for me.
Welcome back to the next episode of The Journey of a Grassroots Rugby Coach. More tracksuits, less business suits. And in this episode, I'm speaking with Dave Ellis. Dave has over 30 years experience in coaching and playing and in coach education all around the world. He's worked with some of the greats of the game. He has worked as the skills coach with the Auckland Blues from 2016 to 2018. He's also worked with Pat Lamb at Connacht between 2013 and 2016, which also culminated in winning the title whilst with Pat. He is now the facilitator and skills coach at the International Rugby Academy in New Zealand, or IRANZ, which is where I met Dave a few years ago. He's passionate about what he does and about developing the game. Many years ago, he even teamed up with Barry Honan and created a software company called Digisport. Some of you may have that program. I have a copy of it. I had it on CD. That's how old it is. But there's still some really good relevant drills in there as we use them now. Dave's now based back in Palmerston in New Zealand after his jaunts around the world, and he is with IRANZ still, and he also does some work for the Rugby Site. I hope you get something. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for watching. See you next time. All right, mate. Well, let's make a start.
Yep, cool. I've got your questions, so they're cool. Anything you want to ask me, mate?
Yeah, mate. And it's just a chat, sort of. I've just got a little bit of structure around it, but you know, wherever it leads us will lead us. You know.
Cool.
So just for the listeners that don't know who you are, Dave, just a little 30-second, or I know it's going to be hard for you to do a 30-second who you are, but just who are you? Where are you at the moment? And what's your involvement in the grassroots level of the game?
Okay, cool. Yeah, so for those who don't know me, my name's Dave Ellis. I've been a professional coach for about 20 years. I started at grassroots, and I'm now coaching grassroots rugby in New Zealand. We've just finished our season, so we'll see what happens next year. You never know. It's just like professional coaching. You don't know if you're going to have a job from one season to the next. I've been very fortunate enough to be able to coach professionally in Ireland and in New Zealand. I've been involved with the International Rugby Academy for over 20 years as skills coach, coach development, etc., etc. Yeah, that's pretty much me. I'm learning the game just like everybody, which is changing daily. So yeah, it's me in a nutshell, really.
Nice, great. Thanks, Dave. So let's go, because most of this stuff's all on grassroots stuff. So I know although you've been a professional coach for a long time, you've worked in that development space for grassroots coaches, which is how we met through one of the IRANZ courses. So just thinking back, probably more at the grassroots level, what's one of the biggest heartaches or disappointments that you've had as a coach?
I've been really fortunate. I was thinking, you know, along these lines myself, and I think I haven't had too many heartaches or disappointments as a coach. Like every day's a new day, and there are times I think when if I think for most it's losing a grand final or something, or having a team that you think you're going to make a grand final with at grassroots level. But overall, I really struggled to come up with too many negatives, because you meet wonderful people along the way, as you know, and it's at grassroots level. I think it's about keeping your focus nice and accurate, and realizing that you're there for the game, not always for the ups for you as a coach. So sorry, buddy, I can't really come up with
that's really good, mate, because a lot of the guys I've spoken to, they've sort of gone along that, you know, they've had ups and downs, and probably, and even when I first started coaching, we're all results driven. We've got to win, we've got to win, we've got to win. But then as you, like you said, as you get along and you develop, you just go, you know what, the winning will happen. Yeah. So let's then flip that on its head, mate. What's some of the good moments you've had coaching? And again, it doesn't need to be results based.
Yep. Well, for me, it's always neat when somebody comes up in the street, especially when we're involved in the rugby academy. You know, some kid up in the street and says, "G'day, Dave. You probably don't remember me, but," and then they say that they're now got a professional contract somewhere, or they're just coaching whatever they're doing, or playing wherever they are. That's always been, and that's probably been the biggest motivator for me. I really love it when that happens. It happened not that long ago. Some kid come up to me. And actually, he's one of the boys who plays for the Hurricanes. And he came up and said, "Oh, can you remember me, Dave?" And I did, but I struggled, you know what I mean? Because we see so many players. But we had a good old chat there for a while. And it's just nice to know that, I think, you know, those are the good things. You know, somebody remembered that you did something nice for them one day, or, you know.
Yeah, no, that's probably a good point to make, especially to some of the younger coaches around out there. It's those connections you make with players. I found doing some of the under 15 rep stuff, that when you get a parent come up to you after the campaign and go, "Oh, you're a bully, so and so," you know, all they do is talk about it, and you just go, "I've known this kid for like 5, 6, 7 weeks," and you know you've just made that difference to some. You know, like you said, that person. Yeah, mate. Oh, no, remember the face, but I can't remember, you know, those types of things.
Yeah, I was really lucky. Probably many years ago, many years ago, when I was first out in the world coaching, really, I coached. I think I might have even told you the story once. I just coached a bunch of ragtag kids in Canada who never played rugby before, and I had all different shapes and sizes, and they didn't know what to do once they thought, "Why do we wear such small rugby shorts?" and all this sort of stuff. They were just a really neat bunch of kids. You could have made a movie about them, you know, Bad News Bears or something. But one of the dads came up to me because his son was a big boy. Like, I mean, big, not necessarily a great way, you know, carried a bit of extra weight on him and things like that. But he was just the loveliest kid out. And his father came up to me, and to me, this was the best thing ever that's ever been said to me from a parent. He says, "You helped turn my son into my boy into a man in the season." Like, this was a 14-year-old kid, you know. And for me, that was the nicest and best thing that somebody could have said to me, because his son was a wonderful kid, but very shy, you know. So
yeah, and rugby tends to do that to those kids, doesn't
it? Yeah. Like, I've still got the card they gave me with all the signatures and the best wishes and blah, blah,
nice,
blah, you know?
Nice. Yeah, no, that's really good, mate. So over your illustrious career, and this
Tell my bank balance is not very illustrious when you look at my bank balance, buddy.
What are some of the lessons that you've learned that you could share with some new coaches?
Yeah, don't doubt yourself. Many years I doubted myself, and I wasted time doubting myself. And for me, that changed my career was surrounded by doubt for many years. You know, Wayne Smith, who everybody will know, once told me when he was coaching the All Blacks, he felt like he was an imposter because he just did what he just did, you know, and everybody was raving on about how brilliant he was. And, you know, that resonated a little bit with me. I didn't get to that, and I do get to that imposter stage a few times in my life. But the thing that I did get was all that time I spent doubting myself. You know, you just got to put your neck out on the block and have a crack. And it wasn't until I started to do things like that all of a sudden things started to happen. So a young coach out there, you'll waste a lot of time if you keep doubting yourself, because the players pick it up. You know, the players know if you doubt yourself.
Yeah.
So,
and you're
it's
right.
all right to be different.
Yeah, and I think we all struggle with that too. Not just as new coaches, you know, like you said, you get into that position and you just go, "Oh shit, am I good enough for this role? Am I not good enough?" What, you know, like, yeah, that's some really good advice there, mate. And I think a lot of coaches get held back on that doubt. give it a crack. What's the worst that's going to happen, mate? At the end of it, you go, yeah, it's actually I'm not that good at it, but I'm going to go back and do something else, and
yeah.
But
you learn, don't you? You pick up
Yeah.
things along the way. Like I'm still picking up things daily. I talk to some coaches, like you've known me for a while now. Like I just talk rugby. I don't talk science. But some coaches will just baffle me with science. I have no idea what they're talking about sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing as what you and I might be just talking, but maybe with words with a few extra syllables off the end of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that can create doubt. So for the young coaches, that can come across as being quite threatening almost, and that's when doubt can set in. I think we start thinking, well, this guy calls it X word pedagogy. He might call it pedagogy, and I just call it what I do. That's how I coach. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there was one thing I picked up this year because I've moved clubs now. I'm coaching in a different club, and the head coach there will go, "Oh, have you seen this drill?" And I go, "I don't know, mate. Show me," because I probably have, but it's called something else. So I'm not writing it off. I'm just going, maybe I have, but I call it this instead of that. I call it potato instead of potato.
Yeah.
And he'll run it, and I'll go, "Oh yeah, I have seen it. I've heard it called this, or this." And I might go, "Oh no, I've never seen that before." But yeah, don't be afraid just to go, "I think I might have," but someone else calls it this. And when you actually look at the world of rugby, like, what do you call your number 10? Is he a fly half? Is he a first five? Is he an inside half? Like, it's the same guy, but depends on what school you go to as to what you call him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's nothing, everything old is new again. Sometimes they just repackage it and trundle it back out again.
Yeah, and I think I was having a chat to a guy the other day. I think it depends. Some people try and sound smarter than everyone else in the room, like a syndesmosis injury.
Oh,
he's got a bung foot, like, like if there's something wrong with or what was the one, the other one, all these injuries that come out. It's a sprained ankle. Tell me how long he's out for. I don't want to know what the diagnosis is, but yeah, we get caught up sometimes. Like you said, like guys will talk the science of it and this and that. You just go, okay, draw me a picture of it.
Yeah.
Or walk me through it, or which is one thing that you do really well. You just do that, break it right down into that simple. This is how, and you can stand back and go, yep, can see how that works.
That's just me being selfish, mate. That's so I understand what I'm talking about.
And that's it. You have to, exactly right. Because I've got players that'll go, "Oh, isn't it called this? If you want it to be called that, mate, you call it that. But this is what I'm calling it." Oh, okay. Yeah. And I think that's where some younger coaches get caught up in the terminology of things and trying to, like you said, learn the science of it rather than how to coach it.
Yeah. It can go the other way too, Bully? Because, the other way they go, okay, I see everybody doing this. We're going to do it, but we're going to do it totally differently. But with no method or reason behind it. They just think, I don't want to be like everybody else and do a 1-3-3-1 attack.
Yeah.
I'm going to come up with a 1-2-3-2 or whatever. So they're going to come up with that, but there's no reason for it. They just want to be different.
Yeah.
So that can work in the opposite way too. You want to be that creative that you almost go overboard. For the skills stuff that I've done over the years, it's amazing how many people make it really, 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 really complicated. At the end of the day, when it's catch pass, we just want to pick up ball up here and give it to that guy over there as quick as we can and as accurately as we can.
Yeah.
There's lots of things to take into consideration, but at the end of the day, that's all we're doing. And if I can throw the ball behind my head and it gets there every time, then why should I be running around saying to this guy, no, you've got to have your fingers pointed, you've got to have your hand, blah, 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 blah. If the outcome is already what you're achieving, move on.
Yeah, that's a good point, mate. I think a lot of coaches will, they'll go and they'll do a course or a seminar or something, and it'll be this, and this, and they'll come to training and they'll try and change stuff, and you go, but what we were doing was working. Like it's like a spiral pass. If a guy can't throw a spiral pass, but he hits the target every time,
yeah,
doesn't matter. Like he's like you said, he can throw it. If he throws it over his head or behind his back or under his leg and he hits the target, let him do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you see it all the time, that kids, and I think too, kids see it on the TV, but they've got no perception of how big a field is. Like they'll see, you know, Quade Cooper or Sonny Bill or Dan Carter or whoever throw this pass, and on the TV it looks like it's about that far, where it's probably, you know, 20 meters, and they're throwing these bullets to the kid that's standing like right here, and the kid can't catch it. Well, of course he can't catch it, mate. But the coach doesn't bring it back then and go, well, just, you know, soften your hands up. Just, you know, how hard do you have to throw it to hit him? Yeah. And I think that's, especially with young kids, they see it on the TV, or coaches see it on the TV and think, oh, I can coach my kid to be the next Sonny Bill and teach him to do these offloads and this and that.
Yeah.
No. Sonny does it because he, like you said, he can do it. Yeah. It's
the world of coaching, mate.
Oh, yeah. So now that you're back at the grassroots level, how do you keep, and I reckon I know how this answer is going to go, knowing you and seeing how you work. How do you keep the training environment enjoyable for your athletes? So, you know, it's 3 degrees in the middle of winter, and, you know, the kids have got 100 other things that they could be doing, but what makes them come to your training sessions when they could?
Yeah. Good question, because I did have short numbers a few times this year, but it wasn't through lack of fun at training. I think I just had a bad bunch. But, well, a couple of things I always make. Training goes for an hour and a half, regardless. So they know when they finish, they know when they start. I always start at the same time every time. If there's 5 guys there or 50 guys there, I still start at the same time. And I finish at the same time. The only time I've been caught up this year, and it usually comes down from you guys, you scrum and line out guys, who want to whack down a couple of extra scrums and go that little bit longer. But so I'm pretty consistent with my start and stop time. I try and I always have my trainings planned, every one. So I always go in with a plan. Sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes I'll digress off it because something might happen that you've got no control over. But I've usually got a plan B anyhow. But I've read a really good story the other day there. It's a speech by Arnold Schwarzenegger on YouTube. And he says, plan B, never have a plan B. He says, if you always have a plan B, that means you haven't fully committed to plan A. And that really resonated with me. I thought, I've never thought of it like that. You know? So obviously, if you you think you're going to need a plan B, you're just not fully committed to plan A. So, yeah, take that one. There's a little gem for you, mate. I just picked up the other day.
Yeah, that's interesting, because even with your plan A, you can be fully committed to it, but it's not just you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's
worth thinking and playing, but, you know, I must admit there have been times I've gone to plan B probably way earlier than I needed to.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's where it really relates. So always have a plan. Go to training prepared. Be there before everybody else is important, I think, as a coach. You can't just rock up, pull a piece of paper out of your back pocket and make things up. Club and honesty with the players worked well, and then a few games. Keep it light. Like I've picked that up from our coaches' webinars more and more from you guys and some of the boys from overseas that are on our podcast, on our webinars, and that the value of games is wonderful. And I've changed lots of things. I've always had games, I guess, but now I've changed even more so to make sure there's some relevance with the skill to the game, to the actual game. You know what I mean? So making sure that everything works in together, so there's no surprises when you get there. So that keeps training fun, I think, for the players. You know, they know that, and don't sweat the small stuff. It's like being with the kids, you know, like we can be overly anal. It's kind of like what we said earlier, eh? You know, if a guy passes that way and it gets the job done, fine. I try to educate the players in such a way too that they understand why they're doing something. So I'm not just running out and saying we're going to do this because I like it. I'll try and give them the reason why, because I find that gives them a better understanding of how to apply it then when it pops up in a game.
Yeah, nice.
That was quite a long-winded answer, mate. I don't know if I.
No, that's good. That's good. That's good. So I want to swing. I want to swing back to the point you made about your training plan and being prepared. Yes, we all plan our sessions, and then you sort of mentioned there that sometimes you go to plan B too early. Just some tips on that are like for young coaches, because we've all been in that spot where you get halfway through a session and you go, oh, I can't run. I want to do lineouts tonight, but I've got, 3 guys injured and only 1 jumper, and I'm not going to get. It's not bang for my buck, or the guys you got there just. I want to run this scenario, but I'm missing my 8 and I'm missing my blindside. Whatever the situation is, where you've got to change things, or you get halfway through a drill or an activity or a game, and you just go, "This is rubbish. This is not what I want to achieve out of it," which happens quite a lot.
Quite a lot, yeah.
So when you're planning, do you then on that plan do you note? Obviously, you have on there what you want to get out of that catch pass drill or the tackle drill or tracking or whatever. You've got your little notes there on these are our key factors that we want to achieve. At what point do we look at it and go, no, this is not going to work? And then do we persist with a similar activity, or do we go away and come back?
Yeah, good question, mate. In the past, and I still believe in this, I've gone away and come back.
Yep.
So I've just gone off, done something completely different, unrelated, and then come back and had another crack. I did this with some kids in Argentina. We did a catch pass activity and they were terrible. And it was exactly as you said, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse. So then we went off and we did a whole bunch of other activities, and I kind of said at the end, let's finish with where we started, guys. See if we've picked up anything from training, because we had other elements that had catch pass involved in them, so they were subliminally being coached in that area anyhow. And then we came back and they were wonderful at the end, and they finished on a bit of a high and they all felt really good. I don't know what I would have done if it was rubbish, but thankfully it wasn't. But I think players don't deliberately train badly. They don't go out there with the whole idea that I'm just going to be an arsehole today. I'm just going to train rubbish. They go out there. So I think information is good. So if we can get as much information of the players as we like. So if we're a coach and we go out there with an activity and we're thinking, okay, the whole point of this activity is to put this player through space. So then as long as everybody around him understands that their role of how we put X player through space, and they've got a good understanding of it, then we can get a lot of stuff through question and answer. Why didn't this work? Why didn't that work? So instead of going to plan B, that's why if we go to plan B too early, we can just go, nah, scrap that, and then we're not going to do it at all. Give them an understanding of why we're doing it. The thing that struck my chord this year, being back in clubland, was I was doing analysis of the opposition only a week before. Normally in pros, you'll be like 3 weeks before, and in the last 3 games or whatever. But I'll be just looking, look, hey, we're going to play, and I'll have a look at one game, and I'd make an assessment from there. So my boys struggled with sometimes me changing the plan up on them until I explained to them, So when I ran our team runs, I'd say, okay, boys, instead of making our first contact in X zone or whatever, and we're trying to bust through there, we're going to try and bust through here now because, and I'll either send them out the footage so they can see it themselves, or I'll explain them the situation to them. So I took a few things from pro rugby and brought them into club rugby that weren't too hard to understand. So if you're lucky and you have 5 or more reserves, it's great if you have even more than that, or if you have a B team that you can play against. I was quite happy to school them up on how the opposition were going to play that week, how they would defend, for example, or things that they might do in attack. So I'd go talk to them while the boys are warming up and doing some other activities. And I'd say, okay, we're going to play a game now, which might be a variation of touch. And we're only going to throw, every second one, we're going to throw an inside pass. Only because we might have seen that the next team that we're playing, they throw a lot of inside passes.
Yeah.
You know, so those were little things that we can take and add to our, gee, I've lost myself, hey, I've gone off on a tangent. But those are little things that we can take and bring into our trainings and gives everybody an understanding, and it just keeps the interest levels up. The worst guy you can have at training is the guy that stands in the corner and has nothing to do, because you're not going to play him on Saturday. So he has to have some responsibility. Yeah. So if you've got, in the Blues, we call them the Renegades, and I quite like that name. So I'd probably use that with other teams as well. So I'd make him, you're the boss of the Renegades, mate. And this is the game plan I want you to run against our guys.
Yeah, nice.
So, makes sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
I think I was miles away from answering your initial question there.
No. So it was about when do we change our training plan? And you know, I think as we get more experience as coaches, it's a lot easier to go, yeah, this is not what I want to do. But I think as young coaches, we tend to get caught in that, well, this is what the plan says, and this is what we're going to do, and, you know, get very regimented in it, or they just throw it away and just go, you know what? And I've been guilty of that. Like you said, you get 5 guys turn up for training, and you go, nah, throw that away. But then you go,
you're doing a defence drill, and you've got 5 guys. Yeah.
Shit! I've got no idea now what I'm going to do, and I've got nothing written down on anything. So, like you said, planning and preparation.
I think games sort of help there, fully.
Yeah, and because the players think we just turn up on a training night and just do what we do. They just think that. And I actually did it with it might have been under 18s or a Colts team that we had, and we had one of the teams forfeited, and I didn't tell the players. I just knew but we're at home, so I just said, right, we'll get there. When we get there, we'll run a training session. And when we got there, I just said to a couple of the boys, okay, you're running the session. And they went, what? I went, oh, off you go, you know. And when they actually then had to think about, oh, hang on, then they all started, and I just pulled guys out of the session and going, okay, so you're sitting over there now, and I'm going, this is what happens on a Tuesday when 5 guys turn up, and they're just going, yeah, okay, now we get it. And the numbers started picking up at training because they just went, and it was, you know, it was a cold and horrible Saturday morning, and I had guys just sitting there doing nothing because, you know, it was just like, well, this is what, we don't just turn up and pluck stuff out of the air for you guys to do. And I think it was a good lesson for the players as well. So around your training plans and that type of stuff, how much input does your playing group have? So what I mean by that, like with one of the senior teams that I've got, I'll often chat to the line-out leader around what we want to achieve in the line-outs. Got a few other guys that I just use as sounding boards because they're the guys that are on the field. And they'll go, yeah, we can't run that because this guy, he's not that good at that lift, or, you know, he's just a bit shorter on the lift, or so they. Do you get feedback from the players around what's working and what's not, and then incorporate that into your training plans?
Yeah, I listen to them. It's often senior players, if there's an element of trust, they'll come up and talk to you anyhow. Yeah. And sometimes if they're wrong, I'll tell them.
Absolutely.
I was really lucky this year with the club. I had a very experienced assistant coach. Very experienced, you know, he'd coached professionally, and he ran the forwards for me. So I just said, I just want ball you just tell me if we can do this attack from there, you know, and this is how, but I ran attack and defense and the team structure. I ran all that. He ran scrum and line out. A couple of times I had to go up to him and say, I don't want a short line out, because we had short line outs all year. We weren't very strong in that department.
Yeah.
And because once you're running short line outs, there's more bad guys in the back line, and we had to modify our back strikes to try and accommodate. But a lot of that came down with discussions with the players as well. Like a player would say, look, Dave, I'm happy to stand a bit wider, and because maybe then we can release the speedy guy through here. And I say, yeah, cool. You know, I was always open for discussions, and the boys were good with that. But they knew at the end of the day, I made the decision whether we go with something or not. But I was in my crew this year, great bunch of fellas, but a lot of them hadn't had a lot of coaching. So they were used to the, you know, the club level where you go up and you have an inspiring speech on a Saturday. You smash the crap out, you run the shit out of them on a Tuesday, and you smash the crap out of them on a Thursday, and you cram a whole lot of information in that they never pick up, and then they play on Saturday and you wonder why they don't know what they're doing. So we just changed everything. I reduced impact at times. I did make a mistake. I didn't get him fit enough pre-season, which is what I wanted to do. It was in my plan, but I just didn't do a good job of it. I didn't have a trainer or anything, and plus I was trying to upskill him at the same time, so I kind of got myself in a bind there. But I just think if the players know why you're doing it, and you have those discussions with those key players, as you mentioned, get everybody on board, we all know what we're doing, then it reduces the time you're mucking around at training to start, and it brings a clarity and a learning, because we, as coaches, coach is basically another name for a teacher, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So our job is, we're not shepherds. They're not calling us shepherds. We're not going out and herding cattle and running a flock of sheep around in a certain pattern. We're actually teaching our players how to play a game that we think suits them. So I think if we think of ourselves as teachers to a certain extent, and your classroom's a rugby field, and you've got an hour to make a bloody good session that everybody's going to feel like they've learned something from, and you can work with your students as opposed to against them, and you're going to get better results.
Yeah, that's really good, mate. I really like, and I often refer to, especially with the younger kids, it's like herding cats, like just trying to keep them. But we got, like you said, that's okay at, you know, under 8s, under 10s, but then as you move up, you've got to sort of move away from that herding and actually educate them in why they're doing what they're doing. So with the next bit, coach education versus coach development. So this old chestnut, I think we've discussed it before. So for me, coach education is you go and you do your level 1 and you get your piece of paper and you get your whistle and you get your bag of balls and off you go. And, you know, then you might come back and you might go, okay, I've coached for a couple of years now, I'm going to do level 2 and whatever. You go through and you do those 2-day courses and you walk away from them and you actually go, oh, I can't remember any of it, blah, blah, blah. But I'm now this level coach, tick.
Yep.
As opposed to, and a lot of the stuff that's happened in the last 12 months around like those coaching webinars and, you know, actually going out and developing coaches. I know it's probably way different in New Zealand than what it is in Australia. What's some advice you can give guys around, especially younger coaches, around that development side as opposed to the accreditation side of it? Yeah.
I think the problem is not with the young coaches, it's with the people who only want to hire somebody who's got the accreditation. Because, you know, that's where your scientists come back in, you know, your guys who can know how to rote learn and recite the law book verbatim, you know. But coaching is about learning how to deal with people and work with people, and people are different everywhere you go. So I think to develop as a coach, you need to get to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty. For me, this year was wonderful. I couldn't have asked for anything better. Like, it was mine. You know, if I had hair, I was ripping it out every week. But shit, I had enjoyed. When I reflected back at the end of the season, I really enjoyed it because it got me thinking again of how to coach. Because, and you'll know this too, you get to the higher levels, a lot of it's a job, and you have to fit into the brick wall of the structure and do your job. You know, and so sometimes you can't. I've been lucky. I've worked with good coaches that have allowed me to have some flexibility. But you know, if you, you know, like, it becomes a task. So for young coaches these days, they just need to coach somebody, get out and do the job, and learn what works and what doesn't, and understand the people that you work with.
Yeah.
You know, Australia and New Zealand. I was really lucky, Bully. I was really lucky that I was living in Australia in the 80s, and I went over as a young player, and you know, made my trade bumming around the country playing for rugby clubs here or there. But Australian had the best coach development, not education, the best coach development, I thought, of anywhere that I'd been, like way better than New Zealand. There were these old guys, and geez, I wish I could remember Kaki and Box and buddy Jake Howard and these sort of people who went on road shows all over Australia, and I learned so much. I went in there as a Kiwi thinking these Aussies aren't going to show me anything, and I walked away thinking, my God, these guys have got it. And then, remember, this is in the heydays of Australian rugby. This is the hours. These are the Campeses. These were guys that were changing the game, you know. And I was so impressed with them. And then when the Australian Rugby Union, in all their wisdom, decided to get rid of that and replace them with these educated robots who could teach out of a book really well, and who made you couldn't be anything unless you were a level AB 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the hell they got now. You know, you couldn't make it. I'm sorry, mate. You haven't got your level 3. How do you get your level 3? Oh, you can't. You know, we only got an intake of X, Y of this year. You know, it baffled me.
Yeah.
Because there were so many really, really good coaches who learned from these guys how to coach and how to deal with people. I came back to New Zealand, and I was a bit of a strange fish then too, but I just loved the Aussie way. The only thing that I noticed, the biggest thing when I came back to New Zealand to coach at club level, and this was way back in those days too, I just came home and went to trainings, and that was the speed and the intensity. So if you married it up with, and I think for me, this is what coaching is for me now anyhow, is bringing the knowledge, but then adding the speed and the intensity into it too. And that's why I do my trainings in an hour, hour and a half. Way to go, full noise, finish, go at club level. So yeah, development and education, I'll go development every day. You need to learn to trade. You know,
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's changing in Australia at the moment around development. But I think for a long time we haven't had it. We've had that education. You do this course, you do that course. You go to one coaching seminar a year, and that ticks you off. And like you said, but the good coaches are actually out there actively looking at, you know, not just rugby but other sports as well, and talking to other coaches, and like you said, getting shit wrong.
Yeah, it's okay to get it wrong.
Yeah, because you know, like you said, we're not those robots anymore.
No, so and you know, like, I think it's a classic example in the weekend's Wallabies All Black game. Wallabies played the best rugby. They were the better team. In my opinion, I thought the All Blacks were rubbish, but they won. Go figure, you know. But I know, you know, Dave Rennie's not going to go back and change too much because he knows he's onto something that's working.
Yeah.
You know, so and that's part of it as well.
And I think that comes back to that where you made that comment before about when you get to that professional rank, it's a job. And I think it was Eddie Jones said at the World Cup, he said, if we win ugly, we win. You pay me to win, and if that means we win ugly, we win. You don't like it because we've won ugly. But when we play good football and lose, you don't like it because we've lost. So, and yeah, like you said, the scoreline probably didn't reflect the game on the weekend.
No.
I thought we played a lot better. Probably not for the full 80.
The brand of it, you know.
Yeah, probably not for the full 80, which is our downfall at the moment. We're not playing that full 80, but you know that'll come.
It'll come.
It'll come. And like you said, Dave, I don't think Dave Rennie will change much at all, to be honest. All these idiots on social media that like to have their comments about this and that.
Yeah, I keep away from that.
What is the message that the coach has given them for a start? Like, anyway. Yeah, no, that's good, mate. Yeah, I'm with you, mate. I'm for the development, and I think although with all these lockdowns and stuff that's happened, it's sort of stopped a lot of the rugby happening. It's actually made that development a lot easier, and you could get access to coaches a lot easier because during the year they're just flat out, they got all this, but now because there was no rugby on, it was so much easier just to you drop a guy an email or contact him somehow, and then all of a sudden you're in a conversation or you're in a WhatsApp group with another heap of coaches and you're just talking about stuff. And I think although it was pretty shitty that we weren't playing, I think there was some good opportunities to develop, and for me it probably enhanced what I was trying to convince myself was happening, was that sometimes you just ask. Just ask a guy, because 90% of the coaches out there will either go, yeah, mate, I can help you, or I can't, but contact this bloke and tell him I've told you to give him a, So it's out there, and I think young coaches really need to tap into that development side of it.
Yeah, I think during the webinars for me this year was great for me. Like all of a sudden, like I've got volumes of paper, like every coach, laying all over the place. We've got diagrams. So I started to go through some of those things, and then I started to formulate them into those webinars that I did, and and I found it really cool. All of a sudden, I was looking at stuff that I was thinking about 10 years ago, and crikey, that's quite relevant, and started to piece it all together, and whether anybody came or anybody listened or anybody really cared, it was still good for me to do that.
Yeah, and that's sort of why I've started doing this too, because I can't remember who I was talking to the other day, and I said, if one person listens and gets one thing out of this conversation, I'm happy. Yeah. But if not, I've got something out of it anyway. And like you said, every time you talk to a coach, even if you disagree with what they're talking about, you learn something from it.
Yeah.
Like you might go, we need to run 1-3-3-1, and I'll go, no, we need 2-4-2, and then we have that discussion about it. We both walk away and go, I still don't agree with what you said, but I can understand why you've gone that way, or you know. So
I think too, Bollier, like it's okay to be different.
Yeah,
it's okay. Yeah. It's okay to do it differently. Don't feel that if you don't know what that is, and but it doesn't matter. Like I think we get so wound up about that. It's there's a lot of bullshit in coaching, as you well know. Where it's some guy will talk to you all day about what he believes in, and will never listen to a word you say, or has goes with a closed mind. This is one way or the only way.
Yeah,
and that's unfortunate. For the young coaches now, I think there's so much information out there that if they take a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of this, have a look at it, objectively from standing back, and then go, that'll work with these players that I have here. This won't, but I'm going to hang on to it because it might work if I get these players to that level. So you always keep it. You don't throw anything away.
No, I'm like you, mate. I've got bookcases full of paper and notes and, session plans and
Best thing.
Yeah.
Best thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just starting to get into my iPad now and work out how to use it, because I'm like you, mate. I'm not real tech savvy, so
Some notes. I use the notes thing on it.
Yeah.
For everything. All my trainings are on it.
Yeah.
The beauty about it, it's a camera, bang, straight away. Yeah, they're bloody awesome.
And the technology's there too. You can actually film something and say to the guys, because I'll go, oh no, I always put my hands this way, and you go, do you? Have a look.
Yeah.
Oh shit, no, I don't. Okay, well that's what I've just been trying to get you to do.
Yeah.
And there's some really good resources out there around apps and stuff like that. And that's really good. Okay, well, I think you've probably touched on this one previously, mate. Thinking back to when you started coaching, what advice would you give yourself as that new coach, knowing what you know now, or advice to a young coach starting out on their journey and having that, because we all have the anxiety around, I'm not good enough, I don't know anything, or we go the other way and think we know everything and we don't. And I think I was the latter to start with, and I'll come around full loop and I'm now the other way. I sit in the middle because I hated to have been coached by me when I first started, mate. I was horrible looking back now.
We've all had those moments, mate.
Yeah, I know, right? So what advice would you give yourself now, like back then, knowing what you know now around coaching?
Trust your instincts.
Yep.
And listen to the players, listen to yourself, maybe, because they self-talk a bit. Listen to the opinions of others, but you don't have to, but by listening doesn't mean you have to act on them. You listen, oh yeah, that was rubbish, put that in the rubbish pile. Yeah, I like a bit of that, so be open to learn, be open to get better, because you're right. At some stage in a coach's life, they're always going to think they know everything, whether it's at the beginning, whether it's at the end, or whether it's somewhere in the middle, and then they come out, get over it. But we're not curing cancer here, guys. We're getting we're getting 15 people to run around the field with a leather ball. So give yourself a reality check, understand why you're doing, know who you're doing it with. I learned a lot about, and I'm still struggling at this, because even though I on the webinars I can talk till the bloody cows come home, when you put me in a social environment now, I'm nowhere like I was when I was a player and when I was a young coach. I'm quite insular now. I kind of sit back and say bugger all. So I think just be comfortable in your own skin, get to know your people. It's important to have those relationships. There's some coaches will come, an example, I'll give you an example recently. I think I might have mentioned this the other day to you as well. I was the touchy-feely coach, just cruising, not coming too hard, until we had a massive loss and played poorly. It wasn't so much the loss, it was that we played so poorly. And then the next week, I had been leaving all the pre-match work to my captain. So I'd coach through the week. Saturday come game day, I'd leave the room with the captain. It's all yours, mate. I'm out of here. I'll meet you out in the field when you come through. This game, we played so poorly, and I thought, no, I've had enough of this, because obviously nothing's being said in there, because the boys were coming out flat. So I actually went in and I swore, not at people, just, and I used a few profanities, which I apologized to some of my players about who didn't like that. But I spoke about things that I thought needed to be addressed, which was about attitude and how do you feel and things like that. And I was pretty firm, and we went out and played like bloody champions, and beat the team two steps ahead of us in the table.
Yeah.
And then one of the boys come up to me afterwards and said, I loved it, Dave. Can you do it next week? And I said, no. He says, no, it's not one of those things you roll out every week. So if you're a new coach and think of yourself when you're a new coach, I know for me, it all came down to whatever I said before the match and whatever I said at halftime, where halftime's too late. It's supposed before the match. both those times are actually too late.
Yeah.
You need to have that. But that one worked in that situation. But I wouldn't, if I did it every week, the boys would have been going, "Oh, Dave's off having a rant again."
Yeah, and that's a good point too, mate, is that getting that balance right of when you lose your lolly and when you just go, "Boys, is this really what we want?" And I remember reading an article, and it was when, this is how long ago it was, John Mitchell was with the Western Force, and I think they were like 27-0 down at half time against the Brumbies, and he just, at half time, he let all the players get in the change room first. He just shut the door. None of the coaches, none of the support staff went in there. He just shut the door and wouldn't let them out. And they come out in the second half and they won the game because they just got it all out and did all that. And he goes, "But would I do it again?" He goes, "No," because the impact of doing that every week is like, "Oh, he's just off on a tangent again." So getting that balance right, because then they know when you start that, they go, "Oh yeah, we're in the shit here."
Yeah.
No,
I think too, just reminded me of something else too, mate, as a young coach. It's happy to have it. It's good to get another voice in. Don't feel you're on your own and you have to do all the talking. Let a player talk or bring another coach in to have something, as long as you're aligned. I think it's okay to do that, because often we get all possessive. "These are our boys, leave them alone. I don't want you to talk to them." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And hey, to this very day, I still get that every once in a while. Hey, hold it, I don't want you to go down there. But I think if you have the conversation earlier, that's good.
Yeah.
It's good for the players. You're not alone as a coach.
No.
Even though you feel it at times.
So we'll circle back. That's something that I found recently, is that getting that second voice in the room. Because the guy I work with at the moment, the head coach, he's very forwards orientated, but he lets me run it. And then every now and again he goes, "Do you mind if I come in?" I go, "Mate." And he always asks before he comes in. And that's not always, he's not always coming in to give him what for either. Sometimes you just come in and watch and just, give a little, make sure you get your hands up or whatever, So, and I think that as a young coach, if that had happened to me, like if you're at one of my sessions or another coach was there and they come over and go, "Do you mind if I watch?" I'd go, "No, mate, piss off. I know what I'm doing."
Yeah.
Instead of, and then you have that discussion before or after. And so how do you find that, or some advice for young coaches around working in a coaching group? Because a lot of the times, like, you start at, you might be fortunate enough to start coaching your kids at under 6 or whatever it is, and you might be you're the coach and your missus is the manager and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you get to that, 14, 16, 18 level, and then there's, 2 coaches, and we don't always see eye to eye, which is also good. But how, especially for young coaches, what would be some advice around making that work?
Yeah. If you disagree in private, not in public.
Yep.
So you want to be an aligned front when you're presenting to your players. I think, you want to be on the same page then. Even if you disagree in the back room, you can have that discussion, come up to some agreement, because you're a team. And I think if there's if players are, think about when we were players, man, we weren't stupid. We could pick, if one coach was the easiest one to go talk to or something, we'd go to him. Or things like that. So you need to make sure that if the player comes to, honesty is really important there. And if you're the head coach, you've got to support your assistant coach. So if a player comes up and says, "I don't like Bill because he tells me to do X, Y, and Z," well, there's a couple of things you can do. Go and have a talk to Bill, not me. Or do you know why Bill is telling you that? So you have those conversations, but you can't throw your coaching buddy under the bus. And if there is a disagreement that has caused conflict within the players, then even when it's sorted out, that needs to be done away from the players as well. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't always agree with my assistant coach this year over some things, and because he had coached at a high level, he was quite strong in his beliefs as well. But he was really good that he would kind of go, oh, okay, you're the boss, Dave, at the end of the day. And you get to make that final call. So he supported me, even though there were times where we kind of didn't agree.
Yeah.
You know? But nobody saw us disagree.
Yeah. And I think it's good to, like, I think we talked about it before, to have that disagreement, because like you said, you might go, well, I want to run 2-4-2 shape and I want to run 1-3-3-1. We don't agree. So why do you want to do that? So you can initiate those discussions, and sometimes you might come around and go, oh yeah, hang on, actually you're right. Or, you know, like I said, come to those agreements, or a middle ground, or whatever it is. But yeah, not in front of the players, which is,
I think learning to question, mate. Well, yeah, learning to question is, it's, you know, they query theory or whatever they want to call it now is coaching. It's been around for a long, long time, and it is relevant. And you learn more by asking than by telling. You know.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
I think if you ask those questions, and people start to think about, like, you know, for example, the old 2-4-2 versus 1-3-3-1, you know, that might just come back for preference or ease of coaching, or something that you've done before and not really thought about the personnel that you've got in your team that it might not work for, or it does work for. So when you start asking that question, why am I doing it? It's really interesting. A very high level player once said to me when I was running the back session, I was a backs coach at the time, asked me, why am I doing this, Dave? I had him running under a line of some sort. And it made me think when he asked me that. I went, oh. And then I said, because I want you to hold this guy here and stop that guy from getting there. But I had to think about it before I gave him that answer. And then I went, oh, cool. And he went, oh, good. Okay, thanks, Dave. And off he went.
Yeah, because he had an explanation of why he's doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, and that questioning is something that we probably, as coaches, especially young coaches, we struggle with. I know I struggled as a young coach with being comfortable with silence.
Yeah.
And I think we've had these discussions before. Like, you'll ask them a question and you know the answer. So when they don't answer within 2 seconds, you jump in with the answer, and they still don't know the answer that you want.
Exactly. Yeah.
So like you said, asking those questions of yourself and then the players to get that clarity around what are we doing? How do we improve it? Yeah.
Yeah. I think it makes us better as coaches, asking ourselves those questions every time.
Yeah.
You know, I'm playing with some new vision stuff that I've gone online and looked at, and being me, I always want to change it and tweak it to something that makes more sense to me, or you know, it's more rugby specific. And I was doing this the other day, and my wife turned around and said to me, "What are you doing that for?" And I said, "Oh, I want to." You said, "Well, what are you going to do with it?" What do you mean? Well, how are you going to use this stuff? You know? Oh, I want to bring it into my trainings. I want to, you know, develop it further. Oh, okay, then who are you going to do that with? Yeah. So all of a sudden she was bombarding me with these questions. Yeah. Which was basically, why are you wasting your bloody time looking at that for? But you know, I stuck to my guns because I can see some relevance in learning a bit more on that. You know.
Yeah, and I think it's also being able not to get defensive when you get asked that by another coach.
Yeah.
At a club I was with once, this guy was setting up a drill that was like, I just gone, what? It was like under 14s, and it was just like, he said, oh, I can't remember what it was. It was just like, it was just a passing exercise, and he had all this stuff set up, and he goes, what are you looking at? And I went, what's the objective, mate? What are you trying to achieve? And he's going, oh, this. I said, are these kids going to be able to do that? And he goes, I don't know. I said, so if they can't, what do they do then? Like, what's your regress on that? Or and he just went, obviously he'd seen the drill somewhere, probably done by a professional team somewhere. Went, I'm going to use that, and had no thought about, oh shit, if the kid can't pass that way or can't hit the target, what do I do now to regress it or to progress it, or what are they actually trying to achieve in the drill, rather than something that looks flash and the kids can't do it. So that questioning of yourself, not doubting yourself, but questioning and having those, okay, what am I going to achieve? How can I achieve it? What if, what if this happens? What if the kid, what if my 9 can't, he can pass 20 metres right, left, but left, right, he can only do 10. Does that affect the drill? Does that affect this and that? Yeah. So, really
very
good.
many. I did a presentation for New Zealand Rugby years and years ago, good 20 years ago, I'd say. And it was my coloured card system you've seen me do,
Yep.
And Chris Boyd, who was Wellington Lions coach at the time, but I never met Chris. I didn't know him at the time. Him and I are mates now, but I didn't know him then. And everybody was, taking notes. And then Chris said to me, so have you ever used this, Dave, or is it just theory? And I went, oh, shit. That wasn't the question I was expecting. And at that time, it was theory.
Yeah.
I'd used it with players in drill activities, but never in a team. And I'm thinking, geez, he's right. I went back and I cried. I have to. He said, because I bailed out Chris years afterwards, and he said, no, he wasn't doubting me. He just wanted to know.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing it to put me on the spot or anything. He just wanted to know. Have you used it in a team, or what environment have you used it in? So, yeah, cool. So, yeah, be prepared to be questioned, and then be prepared to learn from the question as well.
And I think it's good too, like you said, you've done that, and I've done drills, and we've probably all done them, and you just go, oh, I've seen this, and you take it to training, and you say to the guys, oh, I've seen this. This is what it looks like in my head, and go, and it's horrible. And you just say, oh, that's it, guys. We'll shelve it. But having that vulnerability to go, I don't know whether this is going to work, but let's just give it a crack. And then that, for me, that then when we do other stuff, they've then got the courage to say what you want, especially like around lineouts and stuff. They're going, this is not working. Cool. Okay, let's shelve it. Because they know I've already done, I might have done 4 before they've come to me and gone, this is not work for whatever reason. And just being able to do that to yourself, have that confidence in yourself, and just go, guys, I've seen this drill run. I've never done it myself. This is what we're trying to achieve. Let's see. And then go, oh no, it's not working. Yeah. What it looked like in my head is not what it looks like now. Let's shelve it. Let's move on.
Yeah, and that's good, mate. That's great, I think. Good on you.
Yeah, and I think as young coaches, we don't try enough stuff. We just see stuff done and go, oh, I'm just going to do that, and you don't adjust it to fit your needs.
Yeah. So right there, mate. So true. So true.
Yeah. No, mate, I think we're done. I know you're a very busy man.
My wife's got some gardening for me to do outside.
You best go and get the gardening done, mate. Keep the wife happy.
Yeah, it's all wheelbarrow work, mate. I'm not looking forward to it.
And I'll put all the links to all the stuff that you do, like your webinars and stuff like that. I'll put all that in the show notes, mate. So if anyone wants to reach out and get some knowledge around the stuff that you do. I know from experience that you're very generous with your time, and like you said, you'll talk rugby with anyone for however long they want to. So I really appreciate your time, mate, and I think the listeners will actually get more than one thing out of today.
Well, mate, hopefully, mate. Hopefully. I think one of the best things, one of the best things we've done is form this little group, buddy, and I think this podcast is wonderful. So I think it's really neat.
Thanks. And if no one else got anything, mate, I've got pages of stuff that I've written down as we go, as I normally do when I talk to you. So, all right, mate, thanks for your time.
Cheers, bud. I'm going to